It was a loss for Antonio Conte and Tottenham Hotspur, a loss they may not have expected against Aston Villa. 2-0 it finished. And let me say this, Janusz, it was not a buen dia for Hugo Lloris.
Yeah, that's the fourth Argentine that has scored against him in the last, right? I mean, 3 goals in the final against Argentina and another one. So fair point to you on that one. Yeah, where do we start with Spurs? We have to start with Antonio Conte, because this is, I've always been a big fan, and Kay, you would know that, of Antonio Conte, what he has done in the past and the way he's managed in Serie A. But here's the problem. This is not Serie A. This is Premier League. This is Tottenham Hotspur. It's getting ugly. It's getting boring. It's getting ugly. And I think that's not what people want to watch. People will watch anything, especially at Spurs, who haven't won in ages, for as long as there are results behind it. And the results are not there. Finishing top 4 last season was big. Right now, that's slipping away from them. And again, 2 or 3 key players not in the lineup. Bit of an excuse, I suppose, because they're massive names. But I think the non-commitment from Antonio Conte with these results, I think, are going to put him on a hot seat if he's not on it already.
One thing he's definitely committed to doing is talking about the transfer window in these post-match interviews, Mark. Talking today, he said, to become the title contenders here, you need a solid foundation. You need 14 to 15 strong quality players. Then you need to add 2 for around 60 to 70 million to improve your team every single season. So you do need time. What are your thoughts on him saying something like this after today's game?
Well, he's stating the obvious, really, that all teams that are challenging for trophies and others want to strengthen every summer, every window. And they all need a decent base of players. I think Tottenham have got a decent base of players, 14, 15 good players. They're not in the same bracket, I don't think, as City and Liverpool, because they haven't been winning Premier Leagues and Champions League. But Spurs have got a good squad, and I think it's a little bit disingenuous for Conte to say that Spurs need to make 60, 70 million pound signings, because I don't think they've ever done that in the history, apart from maybe under Belly, who wasn't a great success. So I think Tottenham aren't a club that do that. He's a coach that has got a track record of making teams better, so he has to really stick to that. But he's also a coach who likes to spend big money in every transfer window. We saw it Inter Milan, and that it's always the way how he falls out with clubs. At Chelsea, Inter, probably at Tottenham in the future, it will be the same thing. I think what Conte needs to do is find a way to stop Harry Kane. Harry Kane is like his biggest plus, but also his biggest problem, in the sense that, again, today he was starved of the ball and he was dropping deep trying to find the ball. And Kane, when he does that, he's got great vision, he can spray a great pass. But whenever Kane is in the midfield, there's nobody up front. So Conte needs to say to Kane, look, you stay up front, you stay near the goal, stay in the final third, so that when the ball is being put up front, you're there to take advantage of it. He doesn't need Harry Kane in midfield spraying passes to nobody in particular. But because Kane's getting frustrated by the lack of service, he's doing that. So Conte needs to find a way, whether it's in the transfer market or by rotating his players better or using his players better, so that Kane stays in the final third and isn't having to drop him in midfield, because you've got one of the best strikers in the world and he's dropping into midfield. That is not a good thing for any coach, certainly at Tottenham, to have.
Go ahead, Janusz.
Couple of things. He touched the ball the first time, in the 20th minute?
20th minute.
That's not on Conte. That's on players, right? I mean, if I had a Harry Kane, the first thing I would notice that I'm saying, my best player is not even around the ball, so I give him the ball, even if it's a 1-yard pass, just to get a touch and feel for the ball. So they need to do that. I don't know if they realized they hadn't had a touch, but I'd be shocked if they didn't. So they have to do it. But for me, I look at it first and foremost. Antonio Conte has to change, as I mentioned, because in today's football, people don't want to watch that. People just don't. There's no big club in the world right now that will want that, really, unless he goes back to Italy. And I can't even think of a team in Italy that right now has the money and likes the philosophy of Antonio Conte. So that's first. Second, I think he's got to stop blackmailing his club, because I feel that's what he does. That's his way of thinking, that he's going to get a response and he's going to get a player or two. He says he needs 13, 14 players for a foundation. There's a decent foundation that he's been putting. They've been giving him players, right? He's got a World Cup winner in the back. He's got, Son. He's got Kane. He's got a number of good players, and they need to respond to him a little bit better, because he showed more energy on the sideline, the way he does and runs around and all that, than his players on the pitch. So obviously his message is not getting there. And the third, I think, is that midfield, who I think we think it's better than it actually is. Bentancur is a big miss. And we look at somebody like Højbjerg, and I think of him as a good individual player. But when it comes to playing together with either Bentancur or Bissouma, there's not much in it. And we saw that today. I mean, terribly, even in a game like this, outplayed in our midfield, and not for the first time. And when you look at that midfield and you play 3-5-2 or whatever variation of that, you've got to have some creativity there. And I love Bentancur, and I don't even think of him as this great creative player. So unless you think that Skip's going to somehow change overnight, you tell me one player in the center of the pitch in that system that's going to release Kane and Son and the wide players, who, by the way, today is Doherty and Perisic, who at 33 is going to have games like today.
I think Janusz makes a really good point about Conte, and he used the word blackmail on the board. And I think, he has got that habit of forcing his board to make a decision. And I think at Inter, they got fed up with him, and he ended up going on his own accord. And at Chelsea, it certainly happened as well. He's playing a dangerous game at Tottenham because there are a lot of good coaches available. Mauricio Pochettino is still available, and he would go back to Tottenham, and Tottenham fans as well coming back. Thomas Tuchel's available. Luis Enrique is available. And Tottenham have always shown that they're very happy to make a change in the manager department. They sacked Jose Mourinho the week for a League Cup final. So, if Conte needs to look around and think, hang on, I'm not the only kind of show in town here. There's some really good coaches that could take my job in the click of a finger. So maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants to be pushed out of the door, but if he doesn't, he needs to be careful, because there's some very good coaches that could take over at Tottenham and make them better very quickly.
Is he playing with fire, Janusz, then?
Yeah, I agree, Mark. Yeah, I think he is. And you know me. I mean, I've been behind Antonio Conte for a while now, but I just don't like what I see. Again, I bring the key players that are missing are important, because he's got a small squad, I would say, in terms of quality. So I think, if you look at somebody, just take somebody like Richarlison in a game today that was lacking energy. But, at the end of the day, it's excuses. And we're saying today that at the very least, I mean, I thought this was a team capable of winning some trophy. Finally, because I think they've done well under him last season. You think they have, the confidence of it, and somehow they were able to keep Harry Kane. Now imagine that. We haven't even talked about that, but he's got to be looking around. Well, I thought it was getting better, but it isn't. So I think that players will, behind the scenes, start thinking and maybe even talking to the board about a change, because they're going to be afraid that all that he's accomplished last season is going to fall apart. I agree with Mark. There's 2 or 3 managers out there that, if you start getting sick of Antonio Conte always complaining, maybe they pull a trigger.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.